All right. I think we are live. Uh, Hi, everyone. This is Piyush Ranjan. I am the founder of Management Masters and YourMBAadvisor.com. Thank you so much for joining us in this webinar where we are meeting some incredible women who work with us at Management Masters and secured admits to top MBA programs across the world. And to tell you a bit about myself, I graduated from IIT BHU back in 2012 with a dual degree in metallurgical engineering. Then I went to University of St. Gallen for doing my master's in management. And I returned back to India in 2019 to start management masters. And since the last 6 years, we have helped almost 140 candidates, more than 140 candidates end up going to top MBA and MIM programs across the world. And that includes the likes of Wharton, Kellogg, CBS, Booth, MIT Sloan, and all the top MBA programs across the world. This year, in round one, we worked with almost 20 candidates, 10 male candidates, 10 female candidates, and we had an incredible success rate where 18 of them received admits from their dream schools. Uh, Whereas at the same time, for all the female candidates that we had, all of them received admits from their dream schools. So it has been an incredible year for us where we have had people going to Wharton, Kellogg, Chicago Booth, Columbia, LBS, HEC Paris, Darden, Yale, ISB, and many other top schools around the world with more than 5.5 crores in scholarships. So today, what we want to do is essentially because it is the occasion of International Women's Day, we wanted to bring together some of our, female candidates who worked with us and who had incredible success to share their journey with you, to share how they were able to sort of go through the process, apply to their target schools, and sort of get the admits that people dream of. So, without further ado, let me start asking them to introduce themselves. We have Pooja Kadiala, we have Ishika Kumar, and Maitri Mehta. And maybe let's start with a very quick introduction from Pooja, then we go to Ishika, and then go to Maitri.
Hi everyone, I'm Pooja Kadiala. I'm from Andhra Pradesh. I'm a typical computer science engineer. Got into and working for an IT consulting firm from the last 4 years. And yeah, I got my admit to NTU Singapore.
Thanks, Pooja.
Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'll go next. I'm Ishika Kumar. I'm based out of Delhi. I did my undergrad from BITS Hyderabad. Then I worked for 3 years in JP Morgan as a quant researcher. And then I applied to MBA programs. I got an admit from Kellogg. I've been waitlisted at Wharton. So yeah, nice to meet you all.
Hi everyone, Maitri this side. I'm from Mumbai. Typical finance background, completed CA, worked for about 5 years, and after that, I'm pursuing an MBA at ISB.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Now, very quickly, before we sort of go into the details of how you guys went about your applications and everything, the first step when it comes to MBA applications, obviously, is preparing for the tests, GMAT, GRE, right? So all of you were working obviously full time in very very demanding roles. So how could you just walk us through what were the key test strategies that you took which allowed you to prepare for GMAT? Because you all have some exceptional scores. Maitri, you have a 665 in GMAT focus. Ishika, you have a 760 in GMAT. Pooja has a 335 in GRE. So if maybe one by one we could talk about what really worked out for you. How did you first of all fit GMAT into your timeline? And then maybe some tips on uh, what worked out for you while preparing for the tests. Uh, so maybe let's start with Maitri.
Sure. I think one thing which I hear a lot of people say is that they keep delaying their GMAT because they don't feel ready to get it going. One thing I found helpful was before even getting started, I spoke to a lot of people to kind of figure out what my target score would be. I think that fear, in some sense, kind of gets you started. Make sure you're sticking to your timetable and things of that sort. And other than that, I think one thing that kind of stood out for me was also knowing what my strength was within the portion itself. I was good at quants, not so good at verbal and DI. So the way I used to structure it is I would start with DI, take a break, then do my verbal and then do quants because it's an adaptive test, right? So it's gonna give you questions according to how well you do in the previous section as well. So you want to structure it in a way that works out well for you. So I think that's one good thing to figure out while you're practicing your mocks as well.
Right. Makes a lot of sense. Ishika, a slight variation on that question for you. Because you were working in a very demanding role, right? You're working as a quant researcher, similar as Maitri, right? A very demanding VC role that she had. Like, how did you first of all find the time to prepare for GMAT?
I made sure that I booked GMAT like a bit in advance, so I had some time. I would come back from office and just spend 1 or 2 hours daily. I think it's not about the brute number of hours. Then it's about consistency and reviewing your mistakes. It's not just about the number of hours you're putting in. Just make sure that whatever you're doing it with like a clear mind, and then reviewing the mistakes. I think reviewing mistakes really helped me. In fact, the last day of my GMAT practice, I did not solve any questions. I just looked at my mistakes. So I think that kind of helped.
Right. And any particular test strategies that you sort of adapted or adopted, which
Yeah.
helped you sort of prepare better because you ended up getting a mammoth 760.
Right. So I used Target Test Prep. It's an online resource for solving questions. I made sure to keep a log of all my mistakes. And I think one advice I would give to anyone who's taking GMAT, it's not about solving the maximum number of questions because, as Maitri said, it's adaptive, right? So it's also about knowing when to leave a question. So let's say that when you're solving questions and it gets really hard, you might think that you can spend another minute to solve it, but that's the trick. That's the catch. You don't have to spend that extra minute. You just leave that question, move on to the next easier question, and solve as many as you can. And that strategy actually helped me in my verbal, which was actually better than my quant. But yeah, I would suggest that to other people as well.
Right. Sounds pretty interesting. Now, coming to Pooja, uh, why did you choose GRE in the first place, right? Why not go with the traditional GMAT? Because if you see the online forums, if you see online chatter, then everybody goes, GMAT is the test for MBA programs. So why not take that and go for GRE instead?
The story is a little funny. Actually, the plan was to go with GMAT, but most of my friends were planning to go for their MS in US. So they were writing GRE. So I thought, मुझे अलग रास्ते में क्यों जाना? Why would I have to go in a different way? Because most of the colleges accept both GRE and GMAT. साथ मिलके पढ़ेंगे यार. If something goes wrong, they'll come and help you. And I think Maitri and Ishika covered all the points about preparation. But one thing about friends, doing it with your people, it helps you a lot. एक से बेहतर दो दिमाग ना. So they'll find you the right side. So whenever you're going somewhere wrong, na, they'll stop you. Okay, this is not the way you're doing it. It's not right. Just make sure you change this. So it's
Okay.
always great to do with like-minded people.
Right. That sounds very interesting. Uh, I have a very different sort of aptitude towards that. But I think that also that kind of talks. So I am somebody who is never able to study with other people, right? But I think this is where your personal uh, understanding of how you work well also comes into account. If you know that you work very well with when you're studying in groups, then maybe that is a better strategy for you to adopt. Right. So that's a very interesting way. So overall, any particular strategy or insight or tip you would give to candidates, who are currently planning to prepare for their GMAT or GRE, that you believe would be, could be crucial in helping them sort of score very high?
I think consistency is the key. With your tight work schedules, getting up every day morning and working on your GRE or GMAT is not easy. So try at least to do it for half an hour a day, but do even for half an hour. That's what I suggest.
Right. Anything, Maitri or Ishika, that you would want to add to that?
I think having an error log just from the time you start, like even if you're solving a topic for the first time, but if you just get started over there, you'll find out what your weak points are way in advance. So keep that going, like right from the start till when you're done solving all the mocks, just keep that going because it'll just help you strategize in ways you don't even realize you're strategizing.
Mhm. Okay. Okay. And Ishika, anything that you would want to add to that?
Like a little specific probably to the GMAT test, I'd say that people think that verbal is not at all logical. I would like to say that it is very logical. You can actually score well in it if you think of it from a logical perspective, because that's all they're trying to test. So for people who are scared of verbal, it's nothing to be scared of. It's pretty logical. That's all.
Oh, sounds pretty good. Let's come to the next thing, right? So, okay, one final question before we sort of end the GMAT thing. Because a lot of candidates would be in that GMAT preparation phase at this point of time. Uh, by when, because all three of you applied in round one, you had your results very early, right? Uh, so if somebody is looking to apply in round one, and at the same time, currently they're preparing for GMAT or GRE, by when would you suggest, what would you suggest as an application timeline for them based on your own experiences? Ishika, do you want to take that first?
Yeah. So what I did was I applied in 2024. I finished my GMAT around December 2023. I had a breather space. I took, I just relaxed for a couple of months, and then I got back into applications around April. So that's a more relaxed timeline. But for people who want to do it things like in the same year, that's also completely manageable. But I would say that take breathers, like wherever possible. Just try to take a week or two of breathers, but you can manage it in 1 year. Like give it early in the year or even now, and then just take a week off and then go ahead with the applications.
Right. Pooja, when did you finish your GRE?
It's back in 2021 when I was in
Okay, so
school.
way too
Yeah.
long ago. Right. So when did you start thinking of working on the application in that case?
I decided like 1.5 months before, because that's when I got
Okay.
convince my family to let me go. So maybe 1.5 months is the time gap I had to
Okay.
work on all
Okay.
the essays and stuff.
Right. Maitri, when would you suggest, if somebody is looking to apply in round one this year, and it's March, we are, early March right now. So by when would you suggest people to finish off with their GMAT prep so that they can get started with their application?
I would say R1 is typically September
Yeah.
end, right? Deadlines,
Yeah.
right? I would say give yourself 2 months for applications because it does require that much of time for research, essays, everything. If before that, that's sufficient time. I think you can. The way I planned it was I would give 2 attempts of GMAT, one like a test run, but that's me. That's not everyone, I guess. But just like I kind of backward calculated it, and then that's how I did it. I think try to close it out by July, I would guess. Yeah.
Makes sense. Now coming to your choice of these schools and where you guys wanted to apply, and all three of you had very different sort of aspirations. Pooja, you were only looking at Singaporean schools. Maitri, you were only looking at ISB. Ishika, you were primarily looking at the top M7 schools only, right? So could you just walk us through your thought process of how did you select, where did you want to apply, and why did you select that? So I see Pooja is unmuted, so maybe let's start with Pooja.
Um, Basically, I'm very close to my family. I did not want to go to US, anywhere far from home. So, and also my family is very conservative and they're very scared to send me out. So I thought I'll find something in between. So I thought doing an MBA in Asia would be a great option. So I looked for schools across Asia, and I thought Singapore was offering some of the best. Like the top three were from Singapore. So I thought, why not go for Singapore since it's just very near to home. And yeah, that's how I shortlisted Singapore, and then went deep into the universities, got to know more about that, and then picked the ones that suited me better.
Sounds pretty nice. Maitri, any particular reason why you kind of restricted yourself to say, you only want to apply to ISB? Uh,
Sure. So two found. One is based on like a long-term view of where I see my career and life going. I know I want to stay in India in the long term and the midterm. So had I even selected a school abroad, it would have been 2 years MBA, 4 years ROI, and then back, right? So which is why I thought firstly, I didn't want to do a 2 year course preferably. So ISB offers a 1 year course, which was a good fit. Second was wanting to stay in India. And then the third thing was I want to eventually pursue a career in investing. And we know India businesses work in a very peculiar way. So I just thought studying in India made a lot more sense.
Right. Ishika.
For me, I think it was more about wanting that global exposure. I felt, I've already spent a lot of time and I worked in a global firm. So I really wanted to experience working on site. And I felt that, I also needed a career switch from quant research. I wanted to go into consulting. So for me, it was like wanting to go into the strongest MBA programs which exist in US. So, and again, there was no commitment on my side. So like, family commitments or anything, they were okay with it. So I just went ahead with that.
Right. And once you started sort of working on the applications, once you got into the groove for that, what would you guys say were the biggest, most challenging aspects of the applications that you found? You know, Ishika, maybe we start with you
Yeah,
this time.
for me, I think it was making sure to get the perfect level of, the essays and everything, going through multiple rounds of review. And Piyush, thankfully, you were always there to kind of edit it and make sure that we had the best version out there. But yeah, that was very rigorous. Managing it with the work was a bit challenging. And of course, research of the school, because we need to make sure that, the school fit is good. That increases your chances of getting in, how to tailor your essays to kind of align it with the school ideology. That also required a lot of research. So I think those were the few aspects that were a little challenging in the application process.
Right. Maitri, anything particular that stood out for you in terms of, which made the application process feel like I don't want to do this anymore?
Uh, I don't think it was, I don't want to do this anymore. But what I found unexpectedly hard is you think you know yourself and where your motivations are coming from. But there's a 1 hour call which happens with Piyush, which is more like a therapy session. And that's where you realize, oh, this is why I do things the way I do things, right? So I think that's where having Piyush sort of helped, because it kind of helps you tap into a really good story. And then that's what eventually comes out in essays. So that was unexpected. I don't think it was like, it's not a bad session, it's a good session only. But yeah, that was very unexpected.
Okay. Pooja, anything that stood out for you? Challenge. What was the biggest challenge that you faced?
For me, having the limited time constraint, like I had like 1.5 month to complete my application, and I can't afford to go wrong in any which way possible. So choosing the right help and right consultant was very difficult for me, because Singapore is not very popular choice among people, right? We don't see a lot of people going Singapore, so we don't have a lot of people out there to help us with Singapore colleges, right? We don't have many people who've sent students there before. So for me, that was the difficult part. Yeah.
And any particular challenges that you faced as a female candidate, in terms of, working on your applications, in terms of figuring out any information that you had or that you required for the applications or anything like that? That
Uh,
feel free, any of you can pick up the question. Feel free to sort of add.
For me,
Sure.
initially it was tough because, as I was saying, I couldn't find the right help. So it was very difficult for me to reach out to people. So I was reaching out to multiple consultancies, and nobody were like, "We didn't send anybody to Singapore. We don't do that here." And that was a very harsh answer to hear. And I thought, like, let's do one thing. Let me reach out to students in Singapore who are from India, and we'll know if there's anybody who've taken help from any consultant. So I reached out to people from NUS, NTU, multiple colleges there. And from there, it was initially difficult because I'm not so active in LinkedIn initially. So I had to become active and then ping them every now and then to check about everything. So that was one difficult part as a female. But the second thing is, of course, the family. Like, we need to continuously reassure them ki, okay, it's fine. I'm going abroad for the first time, but I'll be safe. I'll be fine. It's worth it for the college and for our
Okay.
future. So yeah,
I
that
think I
was.
agree with Pooja here, because families are a little conservative sending their girls to like remote places, which is given and it's a genuine concern for them. But at the same time, it kind of makes you feel guilty or concerned that, you're putting pressure on your families, and that also affects your daily mental state. So, you have to be very clear that, okay, compartmentalize things and make sure to motivate yourself. I think that's something that's kind of unique to women's challenges.
I think one more thing which interestingly came out was when which is what my mentor told me, like my boss, right? So she was like, typically when she's read essays written by females, they tend to not speak very confidently about themselves within the essay itself, because you tend to undercut your achievements, or you're just very humble. And that sometimes you need to go out of that and write a really brilliant essay, right? So you don't need to be unnecessarily humble as well. So yeah, that was something.
Hmm, interesting. Sounds pretty nice. Now, I think almost all of you talked about, that you have to connect you with various students, alumni, and most of you did that a lot, right? You would have connected with the BSchools teams, the students there, the alums there. So what, first of all, I have two questions here. One, how do you actually reach out to those people? And second, why is that even important, right? Maybe this should be the first one. Why do you think, based on your experiences, why is reaching out to people important now that you've gone through the process? And second, how do you do that, and what would be your suggestions in terms of best practices there? Maitri, do you want to take that?
Yeah, sure. So I think one thing was every conversation you're having, even while picking a school or trying to find out what are the essay questions, what kind of things they look for, all of that is building into something you know more about the school. And those are tidbits you can bring out in your interviews in every single thing. You know that XYZ club is there. You know this is there. That's so exciting. All of that culminates into a knowledge base. So it's really important to speak to a decent number of people. Don't overdo it also, but like a decent number of people. And yeah, I think I'll pause here and maybe y'all can take up the how.
Yeah, for me, I think reaching out to obviously building knowledge base is a very important thing. And secondly, I think I like to get inspired by people. So when I hear their struggle stories, it kind of motivates me to also do things and think that, okay, I'm not the only one who's struggling. So that's also there. And yeah, definitely how I reach out is just, try to be very polite to them and try to find a common connection, either through, Piyush, if you have mentored someone, then I would reach out saying that, okay, I talked to Piyush and he referred me to you, etc. Or try to find a connection with bits or something like that. So that really connects you to the person and they are more likely to help you and give you some time. So yeah.
Right. So basically find a common ground where you can connect with people and then sort of reach out.
Right.
Pooja, anything that you would want to add here?
I'd say do not ask for any generic questions, like something that's very obvious that you can find on websites. Don't be like that. So they'll likely not reply back to you. So if you're being very specific about what you want to know, which is obviously not available in websites in common platforms, so they will then be more than happy to help. I think almost everybody I reached out positively replied back as soon as they can. So I just that.
Also, like, don't be afraid to reach out cold on LinkedIn. People are more than happy to chat. And if you reach out to people if you're looking to get placed into consulting, if you reach out to people in consulting from that school and just, say that aspiration, they're more than happy to help.
Right. Now, reaching out reminds me, please feel free to ask your questions. We will have a live Q&A, which will pick up towards the end of the session. So please feel free to sort of add your questions into the chat box because we'll pick up those questions. The only caveat here is that you will need to subscribe to the channel before you can add your questions. So I think that should take you hardly 2 seconds to do. But absolutely feel free to ask your questions, ask us your doubts, because we have some really experienced folks here who can help guide you through the challenges that you would be facing probably at this point of time in your career, right? So let's move forward. Now, all three of you have had some incredible success with your applications, right? What would you say actually made you stand out as a candidate? Let's start with Pooja this time.
See, I'll tell you my story because I come from a very like Piyush call, I come from a very competitive pool of applicants. So I am a typical computer science engineer from India, and I did working on an IT consulting company. So it's very difficult for me to stand out of all the other applicants. So all I think I did was be as me as possible. like be it my essays, be it my resume. I thought of, instead of highlighting these are my percentages, these are my scores, I rather wanted to talk more about what I think, what my beliefs are, or what my perspective towards the world is. Because I think through the essays and resumes, like the admission committee is also looking for the candidates that can bring something new to the table. Of course, you are an achiever, that's why you're applying to these colleges, but they will look for something different that you can bring to the table. So I thought I just had me. And one thing I avoided from the beginning of my application was not looking into some references. Like, for example, when there's a questions, the essay questions, I would never see for a reference essay out there, because that would influence me to write something similar. So I would just go ahead and write however I want to, and then share it with Piyush, and he'll be like, I think ये इसका जरूरत नहीं, इसको निकाल देते हैं, let's bring something else that you think about it. So that's how I did. Like, I just tried to be as me as possible, and that's it.
Sounds pretty nice. And I don't think I said that too many times to you.
No, you did.
Ishika will, if Ishika says this, I'll agree. We have
Yeah.
changed essays multiple times.
Yeah.
In your case, I don't think we did that so many times. I remember distinctly telling you, why are you even working with a consultant at one point, right?
That's
So,
so sweet of you. But
all right, let's come to Maitri. Maitri, what do you think allowed you to sort of stand out as a candidate?
I think one thing that I thought was a weakness that Piyush has even talked about turned out to be something that probably the school found interesting, was that I'd already sort of done a career pivot. So Piyush sort of helped me put that forward in a very interesting way. So I was working in valuation, switched over to VC investing early stage. So one question is, okay, you've already done this. The other question is, why? What do you want to bringing that story sort of helped, and being very articulate about it was important. So I think that's where Piyush really came in handy. And I think that uniqueness sort of came out in some sense.
Right. Makes sense. So basically, what you're saying is having the story that you had, you know, presenting it in a very compelling way,
Yeah.
right? I think and a very truthful way, to be very honest,
Right.
right? That kind of made the difference. Makes a lot of sense. Ishika, anything? What would you say? What helped you sort of get the kind of successes that you did?
I think firstly, I think I would like to thank you for helping me kind of figure out, because I had like so many things going out, and it's really important for someone to kind of put a sophistication towards it and what could actually be gleaned out of so many different things that I've done. But I think one thing that stood out was, I had started a mentorship program in college, and that's something that it turned out was like a pattern, and all the things that I did is I want to create like support systems. Like when I'm trying to learn new things, I just make sure that I can just kind of give back, and Piyush helped me put it in a very nice way. So I think that was something that maybe schools value, and kind of helped me stand out from the application pool. But yeah, that would probably be the one thing I'd say.
Right. So my next question was going to be about feedback about us. But I think most of you have taken the opportunity already to do that. So anything that you would want to add with respect to feedback about us, working with us, or maybe let me change that question. Uh, One, why did you guys choose to work with consultant, right? Work with us. So why did you guys choose to actually work with an MBA consultant? Why were you looking for that? And then why did you decide to actually choose us to work with? Let's break it into these two questions. So why were you looking for a consultant first of all?
let me
Um,
go in the end, because I have a little story to tell. You
Sure.
guys, please go ahead first.
Maybe I can go. So I think one of the things which I've already said twice was, I think I struggled with what do you say about yourself, right? I mean, what is unique about you? So I think that's where a consultant helped. Also, having someone help you who has knowledge of what schools like to hear is important. So I think that's a great thing as well. Also, Piyush is very good at making you stick to timelines. So I think that's another thing
But that you figured out later.
that I figured out later. That's true.
Right. Ishika,
um,
anything
Yeah,
Yeah.
for me, I think firstly, of course, I needed a consultant because given the number of edits I needed in my essays, anyone could tell that I really needed someone to kind of guide me through the process. I knew that beforehand, so I just like talked to a lot of people, and many people referred me to Piyush and Management Masters. And I think one thing I really liked about the whole process was Piyush being there at every step to kind of help you through your doubts, queries, whatever, and never being like impatient and being very nice and explaining everything properly through various calls. So I think that process, it's a very difficult and kind of intimidating process, and you need someone to constantly kind of advise you. So that aspect was really good.
Right. So both of the feedback that you've given is essentially after the fact, once you guys signed up with us, right? But why did you know, okay, you decided that you would want a consultant, but then why did you choose to work with us?
For me, it was purely like a referral basis and kind of, going through the steps. I went to the website and I saw that there were so many steps and it was very structured. And, you need structure when you're doing something so big. So I felt that this would really help me through the process. So that was the reason why I decided to go with Management Masters.
I
Thank you
actually,
so much.
yeah, I got together, like I met a alum who I knew from school, and they went to ISB. They had a very similar profile, and they had really good things to say about Piyush. Yeah, kind of didn't overthink it after that.
All right. So any of you who are watching, make sure that you reach out to Ishika and Maitri so that you can get to know more about us and then you can come to us to work with, right? Because both of them, they got to know people who work with us and then they came through the reference. Right. Pooja, I think you wanted to go last, so I'm coming to you
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
Yes.
When I was
Yes.
just looking for why I wanted a consultant in the first place is I had very limited time. 1.5 month for working in an MBA application is little tight scheduled. So I wanted someone to tell me what's right and what's wrong. Because I can't afford to go wrong anywhere. So that's when I was reaching out to multiple consultants and I felt most of them were very commercial and I even told you that part. So I thought the best bet will be going to the alums of that college and asking them, you know what, I want someone's help. Please suggest me somebody from India. And I reached out to multiple people and I heard a common name from most of them was Piyush Ranjan. I was not even heard about management masters. Nobody was speaking about that name. I just, someone saying Piyush Ranjan, I had to Google him. I had to go to the YouTube and find a video of him with an NUS student who sent a student to Singapore before. And when I looked at it, when I saw the comments down there, they're saying this is so-called promotion and stuff. But when I go in LinkedIn and search, that guy is actually part of the NUS MBA cohort and he who is pursuing there. So that's how I got to know about Piyush. And this man, I mailed him, this is my GRE score. I want to apply to this college, so and so. He's like, sorry, I'm busy. I don't have time.
I
So
don't
that
think
was
I'm
the reply
creating
I
the
got.
best impression here.
Yeah, that was the reply I got. Sorry, I have a very tight schedule. I don't have time. So I can't, take up your applications. And then and he suggested me some of the good consulting firm also. He suggested me MBA Crystal Ball. And I was like, okay. But that somewhere trigger, no, after you reached out to multiple consultants who were so commercial, this guy, I'm going in to him and telling that I'll pay you, just help me with this. And he's saying, I'm not having enough time. I don't think I'll be able to do justice for you. That's when it hit me. This is the kind of person, I want to work with. जो मुझे मुंह पे बोले, like this is wrong and this is right. So that's the reason I went back to him, mailed him, LinkedIn him, saying that, please, मैं ना आपका schedule के हिसाब से मेरा schedule set कर लूंगी, please आप मुझे help कर दो. So that happened, and then he's so sweet. So he somehow arranged his schedules, and he suggested me a different path instead of the whole school process, and then he helped me throughout the process. And there's this one thing I would like to highlight, like in between the process, right? In one of the call, I asked him, like, Piyush, मुझे सीट आएगा ना? Like, I'm doing well, right? ये सबका question है, मुझे आएगा ना? And he is like, what would you expect? आएगा आएगा क्यों नहीं आएगा बोल के बोलेंगे ना. He is like, अब मैं बोलूंगा कि नहीं आएगा तो will you stop doing it? Replies like this. I was like, no. And he gave a pause. And I was like, no. And then he's like, exactly, do it, give your best. So that's a kind of person I wanted to help me throughout my process. So that's very obvious to me. It's you.
Perfect. Thank you, Pooja. I think that has kind of captured my character very well. I do try to be as straightforward as possible, but I think it can come off negatively sometimes as well. But
Not actually negative.
bef
That really helps.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Uh, what would you say, before we go into the live questions, we have a few questions from quite a few people. So what would you say, if you had to advise one thing to candidates who are currently preparing for an MBA, what would your advice be? What should they do at this stage to maximize their chances to get into their dream schools? Uh, so maybe this time we start with Pooja.
So I would say, I mean, there is this conversation I had with one of the admissions team member, like a coffee chat we had with one of the college. She was saying me how important it is to apply in round one. So she told me, she just simply told me, my basket is empty and I have multiple apples. I'll pick and choose the ones that I think are good enough. So they in the round one, you have many. I think if you are a good profile, because you'll be the first candidate from your background. Like if you're coming from consulting, marketing, or IT, like probably you are the only one in the first round. So the chances of you getting picked is more in round one, is what I believe. If you go in the round two or three, right? The chances of you getting in slightly reduces, because maybe there's already an applicant from IT industry. Maybe there's someone from already marketing. So if you're coming from the same field, they would really pick another person.
Right.
So
So
not about
essentially prioritize round one
round one.
as
Absolutely.
much as possible. Right. Uh, Ishika, what would you say?
I would just say that researching never stops. Like, it's a continuous process. It's at the start, but even while you're creating your applications, make sure that your essays are aligned to the philosophies of the school, because it's very easy to get lost while writing essays. There are so many ideas, but make sure that you are putting and highlighting those things that the school values the most and align it. And Piyush helps a lot with that. So I guess that's something that you have to keep prioritizing all the time.
Right. Makes a lot of sense. Thank you for that. Maitri, what would your suggestion be?
Make sure you know what you're doing, why you're doing. The why is extremely important, and schools see through that very easily. So there has to be a strong reason why you want to go to that school. A part of it is research, of course, a very important part, but it's also innately, you know, what you want to achieve post. And I think if that's aligned, it gives you a much better chance than if it's just for XYZ brand or whatever, right?
Right. So very in-depth, as much in-depth introspection as possible, and
Yeah.
being very truthful to that. I think that makes a lot of sense, right? Uh, so I think overall this is super nice discussion. Before we go into the live questions, please, anybody who's all the people who are watching, please feel free to sort of add your comments or add your questions in the chat, and we'll take that up. Also, if you would want to know more about us, how we work with candidates, and some testimonials about us, the processes that we have, the services that we have, please go to managementmasters.in, and you will be able to find all the details. At the same time, if you're still preparing for GMAT or GRE, or you're looking to prepare for GMAT or GRE and are searching for coaches, uh, check out yourmbaadvisor.com. This is a new initiative that we have, where we have listed some of the top personal tutors in India for GMAT and GRE. You can check their profile out. You can check out some reviews that they have. You can also check out a blog where we are sharing details and insights on how to prepare for GMAT or GRE, different sections, and what would be the best strategies to tackle. So let's go into the live Q&A. We do have some questions. Uh, we have a question from Isha. What matters more for MBA admissions, a high GMAT score or a strong work experience? Uh, any of you would want to take that?
I think it's both, to be honest. You can't pick and choose. And uh, it has to be
Right,
a mix of both. There's some level of set off, maybe, but always try for your best on both sides. I think
right.
that's-
I would maybe just add on to this. A high GMAT score and a strong work experience. Let's rather redefine or define what exactly high work experience, high GMAT score what does that actually mean? And at the same time, what does a strong work experience mean? right? So as far as the high GMAT score is concerned, I would suggest whichever are your target schools, make sure that your score aligns with that GMAT score, right? The same score, let's say you have 700 in GMAT and you're applying to ISB, which has an average GMAT score of 720, right? Then your score is not going to be high. But if you're applying to a school where the average GMAT is 640, you have a very high GMAT score. So you have to be very much aware of the schools that you're applying to, uh, and make sure that your scores and your work experience, the profile that you have, that aligns with what the school requires. Uh, and if you have done that, then I think both of them are equally important, as Maitri said. Uh, we have a question from Ria, which I think I can clarify. Does a 3-year bachelor's degree reduce the chances for US for M7 programs? Absolutely not. We have had several candidates who had the 3-year degree and who ended up getting into top MBA programs. In fact, this year we have had a candidate with a 3-year degree who ended up getting into Wharton. So absolutely it does not. However, there are some very few MBA programs like the Berkeley House or I believe Pepper, where you are not eligible to apply with a 3-year degree, right? So you simply have to be aware of that aspect. Make sure that you've researched which schools you are eligible for or not. But if you are eligible for any particular school, you are not at a disadvantage in any case, right? Uh, We have a question from Mahima Rajesh. Does 2.5 years of work experience while applying put your application down? I think it again aligns with the questions that we are having, that we already kind of answered. That you have a particular average profile for most of the schools. Try to be as close to that profile as possible. So for most international MBA programs, you would have had they have 5 years of experience at the time of joining, right? That's the average. And the range would be 4 to 8 years for 80% of the class, right? So if you fall into that range at the time of joining, you are good to apply. Uh, Obviously, if you're on the lower side, you need to ensure that you have very, very strong work experience. You have a very high impact work experience. If you are way too high, if you are way higher than the sort of that range, then obviously you're going to be an outlier. If you're way too lower than that range, then also you're going to be an outlier. So just be aware of that. We have another question. As someone, so Maitri, this is specifically for you. As someone already working in VC, which is one of the top post MBA choice for aspirants, what motivated you to pursue an MBA at this point of time?
Sure. So two things. During my VC journey, I realized most VCs are supposed to know how to run businesses. I kind of didn't because I'm from a finance background. So one thing was actually to learn about other things other than finance. So which is why I thought doing it professionally, doing it in a structured manner would help. And even operation roles that come open up after an MBA, that's another way to sort of enrich my knowledge about how to run businesses. So that's kind of the reason.
Thank you so much. Uh, okay, so one question that would apply to almost all of you, given the current job market, right? That you're hearing about layoffs, you're hearing about MBAs not placing people. So, given the current job market, it's very difficult to pivot careers. So, what motivated you guys to go for an MBA in such a tough market condition? Uh, Ishika, do you want to take that?
Yeah. So I was aiming for a traditional consulting role. So I think I talked to a lot of alums, and I figured out that not just alums, like actual students as well, who said that getting placed in a traditional role is hard, but there are a lot of resources out there for you, like there are consulting clubs, and there are like dinner sessions with recruiters, and you just have to stand out, and it's a matter of like gaining experience. So people are getting placed even now, like given that the market is impacted, but traditional roles are not as impacted and people are still getting like good jobs. So that was the motivation for me.
Right. Pooja, anything that you would want to add to that? Or Maitri, if you would want to add? Yeah. Pooja.
I think just because now it's bad, it doesn't mean it'll be bad by the time we graduate, right? So I think there will be multiple reasons to stop you from doing that, but it's all about what you want to do, I think.
Right. So essentially, your reasoning for the MBA needs to be super solid.
Yeah.
Your clarity on why you are going for an MBA needs to be very, very solid, right? Uh, Also, just to add to what Pooja just said, right? Obviously, one of the outcomes of the MBA is your post-MBA career, right? The job that you would get. But what Pooja was mentioning was that comes after what you wanted to learn through the MBA. So what is very, very important and something that I think Maitri also kind of touched upon while she was talking about her, how she tackled the application, or why she sort of, despite being in a VC field, she still wants to go for an MBA, is to actually figure out what do you want from the MBA, what do you want to learn about, right? And once you have that clarity of what exactly are you looking forward to learning, that would matter much more than what would come post the MBA, right? And as Pooja said, just because right now the time is bad does not mean it would remain the same way 2 years down the line or 3 years down the line. Uh, peop- the the way I suggest people to look at it is, yes, the time right now is very bad, but the people who went into the MBA that was 2 years ago, they did not go in with the perspective 2 years later we are going to graduate in a recession. It will be so much fun, right? They came in with expectations of, that they'll grow through their career. So things will happen which are out of your control. Uh, just because there is a recession right now, or there is a looming recession right now, or the economy is not doing that well overall, does not mean that 2 years down the line it will be the same situation, right? Uh, right. We have a question. How can we build or strengthen our profile at this point of time for round one applications? Any of you would want to sort of add to that?
I would say also like if you already know certain weaknesses that you want to work on, you can take up some courses. Like let's say that you don't have so much business experience, maybe take up a course by the school. For example, Wharton offers certain courses. You can take that up, add that as a certification. I think that is one thing that came to my mind.
Right. Uh, I would pick up on the first part of what you said, to build upon that you have to be aware of what you are weak at, first of all, right? Uh, don't do it just because somebody has said, you should do courses. I've had cases where, somebody was working in marketing, they wanted to continue working in marketing, and then they asked me if doing a CFA would add value to their profile. Uh, it would not, because yes, CFA in general is a very valuable certification, right? But it would only add value to people who actually want to do that, right? It would not add value to anybody randomly. So you have to, first of all, be very aware of what you actually want, what are the weaknesses that you have, where you might be lacking, and then sort of build upon that. Uh, so I think it's a very, very nice point that Ishika mentioned. If you come from a background, let's say, if you come from a very tech-heavy background and you don't have any kind of business background or business knowledge, then doing certain courses, as Ishika mentioned, could be very, very nice for you to showcase your commitment towards learning more business or getting some background in business. Right. Anything, Maitri or Pooja, that you would want to add on how candidates can sort of further strengthen their candidature at this point of time?
I think something that's aligned to what your extracurriculars have been, in case you feel like you're falling short on that. I took up a sort of, NGO project a little later in the year, say 6 months before the application started. So it's not going to make or break it for you, but it's just something supplemental to do.
Right, right. Makes sense. Uh, Anything, Pooja, that you would want to add to that?
Now that Maitri has mentioned extracurriculars, right? Like we are now working for 4 years at least. So it's very hard to remember what we did in college. So sit and look back at days and remember what you did. instead of, you have a very short time, doing something new now would not maybe excite the admissions committee as much as what you did during your undergrads. So it's always important for you to look back at what you've actually did, I think.
Right. So basically, makes a lot of sense because you're asking them to sit down, tabulate what they've actually done
Yeah.
previously, right?
My case, I
Makes a
myself
lot of
missed like
sense.
4 5 important activities I did back in college, which I later had to sit and edit.
Right. Makes sense. Uh, we've Okay, so we have a question from another candidate. Uh, I'm a candidate working with the government of Assam. I have 16 months of work experience. How can I start my MBA prep journey for ISB? Uh, okay, so maybe I'll take that question uh, for a second. So starting an MBA prep journey, I think it sounds like something that you're, really starting at, but it's already on, right? So I think the first step for candidates, if you're looking to prepare for MBA programs, is first of all, be very clear of the why behind that. Why do you actually want to go for an MBA? Be very sure that you really need that. Uh, the MBA that we are talking about, global MBA programs, whether it's ISB, whether it's international programs, they are very, very expensive. They are very expensive, both in terms of finance, as well as in terms of the opportunity cost, as well as in terms of the time that you will spend there, right? So be absolutely clear why do you want to do this? Because this why is going to be the backbone of your application process. The second, once you have identified that why, then get started with your test prep. And test prep is something which is incredibly important, and it can be one of the biggest time suckers that you have. Uh, you are looking at people who have done it very nicely in certain time periods, but trust me, these are three people, and they'll for every single one of them, there'll be 30 more people who are not able to finish it within 1 year or 2 years. Right? I have candidates reaching out who have been reaching out to me for the last 3 years, and every time, they are still preparing for GMAT. So do not take GMAT or GRE prep lightly. It could happen very nicely for you, but make sure that it does happen nicely for you. So I think GMAT prep or GRE prep is something which is very, very important. Get that done, get it out of the picture, because once it's done for 5 years, right? So you won't have to worry about it. Once you're done with your GMAT GRE prep, then look at MBA applications. Uh, in the meanwhile, what you can do is, if you feel that you have the right mix of all the different things that B schools look for, then you simply perform your best at your work, and once you are ready to apply, you apply. But if you feel that there could be things that you would want to do to further strengthen your profile, maybe 1 or 2 years before you actually apply, then maybe going for a profile evaluation could make a lot of sense, because it will help you analyze what gaps you might have, where your strengths lie, where your weaknesses are, and then sort of get actionable insights into, that these are the steps that you need to take to further strengthen your profile. And that is something obviously we can help with. So please feel free to sort of reach out to us at managementmasters.in. Anything that you guys would want to add to, how can people prepare for their MBA application journey in general?
How was it from my end?
I don't see any other questions. Please feel free to add your questions if you have something. Otherwise, I think it's been a very, very interesting sort of conversation. And thank you so much. It's been lovely catching up with all three of you. It was wonderful working together with all three of you. And I wish you all a very, very sort of uh, the best wishes to sort of continue with your career and sort of go on and start your MBA program soon. Maitri would be the first one to start her MBA, I think, in less than a month or so,
A
right?
month. Yeah.
Almost a month, right? So that congratulations for that and sort of best wishes. And thank you again, all of you, for joining us. It's been incredible talking to you, and I hope this session helps you out with your MBA application prep.
Thanks.
Thank you.